The ad in the paper, it started with an ad. I wasn't even looking for a new place. Not seriously. I was just killing time, flipping through the back pages of an old newspaper someone had left on the train. Wedged between job listings and yard sales, there it was. Charming countryside home for rent, $150 a month. No background check required. First come, first served. Must be able to move in immediately. Call before midnight. It was absurd. In a world where even a broom closet in the city costs a fortune, this sounded fake too good, too desperate. But something about it pulled me in. Be it was the price. Be it was the way those last words. Call before midnight seemed to dare me. I called. A man answered after a single ring. His voice was rough, like he hadn't used it in years. "You want the place?" he asked. I hesitated. "Yeah, think so. Can I see it first?" There was a long pause. "Sure. But if you come, don't come after dark. Bring cash." The line went dead. The house was just over 2 hours from the city, tucked deep into the woods on the edge of a nowhere town I'd never heard of. The kind of place where the road turns to gravel and cell service dies long before you reach your destination. The directions he gave were vague. Follow Route 19 past the burnt-out gas station. Take the third left at the fork, then keep driving until the woods open up. And they did. There, beyond the tree line, sat a 2-story house, gray and leaning slightly, as if it had been holding its breath for decades. Paint peeled like sunburned skin. Now the windows stared blankly, their curtains motionless despite the breeze. A narrow path of cracked stone led to the front porch, where the door hung open just enough to feel ... uninviting. The man from the phone was waiting, tall, thin, dressed in a coat too long for summer and a hat too low to see his eyes. "Right on time," he said. "You brought the cash." I handed it over without asking for a lease, an inspection, or any of the usual things people do when they're about to move into a new home. He didn't count it, just pocketed the envelope and turned away. "The place is yours now," he said, stepping off the porch. "I wouldn't stay past October." "What happens in October?" I asked. He stopped mid-step, then slowly looked back at me. "Nothing. If you're smart." And just like that, he was gone. Down the gravel road, back into the trees. The inside of the house smelled like old wood and rain. Dust clung to every surface thick enough to write in. Yet oddly, the place wasn't abandoned. Furniture sat in its proper place, weathered but intact. A faded couch in the living room, a grandfather clock ticking faintly in the hall, a kettle still on the stove like someone had just stepped out and never returned. There was no electricity, but the water ran. And despite its age, the house didn't feel like it was falling apart. It felt ... paused, like time had simply forgotten it. I chose the upstairs bedroom at the far end of the hall, the one with a window facing the woods. As I unpacked what little I'd brought, I noticed something strange. Every door in the house had a keyhole but no keys. That night, I sat on the porch watching the sky darken over the trees. There were no streetlights, no headlights, no stars. Just black, thick, and endless. I'd never heard silence like that before. No cars, no hum of city life, only the creaking of the porch boards and the occasional rustle from the woods. And somewhere in the distance, a sound. A sharp, short whistle. I froze. It came again, closer this time, like someone calling for a dog or maybe calling me. I told myself it was the wind, the house settling, animals in the brush. But I didn't sleep much that night. In the morning, I found something strange by the front door. 3 small stones, stacked perfectly on the doormat. I hadn't put them there. First night, first knock, I spent the next day trying to convince myself that the stones on the doormat were just kids playing a prank. Not that I'd seen a single kid since arriving. I hadn't seen anyone, no neighbors, no hikers, no cars. Just trees, wind, and that old house breathing softly under my feet. Still, I brushed the stones aside and focused on settling in. There was something peaceful about the isolation, at least during the daylight hours. I cleaned a bit, aired out the rooms, and even found some candles tucked away in a drawer. They flickered nervously as the sun dipped behind the trees, casting long, twitching shadows on the walls. I cooked a can of soup over the old gas stove and tried to read, but the silence had teeth now. Every creak felt like footsteps. Every gust of wind made the windows rattle like someone was trying to get in. Around 11 p.m., I decided to go to bed. I left one candle burning on the nightstand, telling myself it was just for light, not for comfort. I climbed into the unfamiliar bed and pulled the thin blanket over me, the mattress groaning like it was protesting being used again. I was just starting to drift off when I heard it. Knock, knock, knock. 3 slow, deliberate knocks. I sat up, heart already racing. At first I thought maybe it was the front door. Maybe the man had come back. Maybe I'd left something in the car and someone was just trying to return it. I waited. Silence. Then it came again. Knock, knock. But not from the front door this time. It was coming from inside the house. Specifically from the other side of the wall, my bedroom wall, the one that backed up to the hallway. No, not quite. It was closer. It was coming from behind the wall itself. I held my breath, straining to hear. The knocks weren't aggressive, but they were intentional. Someone or something was trying to get my attention. I got out of bed, grabbed the candle, and stepped into the hall. Everything looked normal. Faint candlelight flickered on the wallpaper, warped and peeling in places. The old grandfather clock at the end of the corridor ticked quietly. I turned toward the wall I'd heard the knocking from. It was bare, no vents, no furniture, nothing that could explain the sound. I placed my hand on the wallpaper. It was warm, too warm, like someone was standing right behind it. I pressed my ear to the wall. Silence. Then, a faint whisper. Too faint to make out words, but definitely a voice. It wasn't mine, and it wasn't in my head. Suddenly, the candle flickered and went out. Plunged into darkness, I stumbled backward, my breath shallow, my fingers shaking. I fumbled with my lighter, flicked it once, twice, finally got the flame going. When I raised it to the wall again, the warmth was gone. The whisper was gone. The house was silent once more. I returned to bed, leaving the candle on all night. I didn't sleep. In the morning, I almost convinced myself it hadn't happened, that maybe I was just overtired. That the stress of moving, the silence, the isolation, it had all played tricks on my senses. That was until I opened the front door. There they were again, 3 stones. But this time, they weren't just stones. They were wet, as if they'd just been pulled out of a river or a grave, and they were warm to the touch. I called the number from the ad. It rang once, then went to static. No voicemail, no person, just a hiss, like something breathing through the line. I didn't leave a message. I didn't know who or what might be listening. That night, I locked every door and window. I placed the 3 stones on the windowsill, unsure if it was a warning, a gift, or a ritual. Then I lay in bed with the candle flickering beside me, staring at the wall, waiting, listening, and when the clock struck 3:13 a.m. exactly, heard it again. Knock, knock, knock. But this time, it came from inside the closet. The locked room upstairs. After that night, sleep stopped being an option. I kept telling myself I'd leave, that I should. But every time the sun rose and bathed the house in light, the fear felt foolish. The closet, empty. The knock, probably a draft. The stones, maybe someone nearby thought it was a joke, but deep down I knew. Something was wrong here. The house didn't want me to leave. I think I didn't want to leave either, not because I was comfortable, but because I was... obsessed with the sounds. With the whispers. With the one thing I hadn't yet explored, the locked room at the end of the hall. When I first arrived, I had assumed it was just a storage space. The door was old, swollen from years of humidity, and sealed shut with a rusted iron latch. No handle, no keyhole, just the heavy presence of something that hadn't been disturbed in a long, long time. But after the knocks, the closet, and the stones, that room began to draw me in. Every night I passed by it on my way to bed. And every night I thought I heard something behind it. Not knocking anymore, just movement. Like soft footsteps pacing, or someone slowly dragging their nails across the inside of the door. I started leaving my candle on the floor in front of it, like an offering, and every morning the candle was gone, not moved, gone, as if it had never been there. By the end of the week, I stopped pretending. I needed to see inside. I tried everything, prying with tools I found in the basement, slamming my shoulder into the door, even trying to pick at the seams with a screwdriver. Nothing worked. It was as if the door wasn't just locked, it was sealed, until the 7th night. That night, I didn't hear anything. No knocks, no whispers, just silence, till 3:13 a.m. At exactly that time, I woke up to a new sound. A creak. Long, slow, unmistakable. I got up and stepped into the hallway. The air was colder than usual, wet, heavy, like a thunderstorm was about to roll in. My candle barely stayed lit, and I could see my breath fogging the air. The locked room's door was open. It's only an inch, just wide enough to see darkness beyond it. Kind of darkness that felt thicker than the rest of the house. It didn't make sense. I leaned in, trying to peer through the gap. I whispered, "Hello?" Nothing. I pushed gently. The door didn't budge. I pushed harder. It held firm like something on the other side was pushing back. Then, the whisper came again. It's not through the wall this time, not through the closet. This time behind me. I spun around. No one was there. I looked back at the door. It was now open all the way. Inside was a small, square room with no windows, just peeling wallpaper, rotting floorboards, and in the center of it all, a chair, facing the corner. I stepped in. The second my foot crossed the threshold, the air shifted. It felt like I'd stepped underwater. Candle flickered, then went out. I stood there, frozen, the darkness pressing in around me. And then the chair moved. Just a little, enough to squeak on the floorboards, enough to make my heart pound like a drum in my throat. I backed out slowly, pulling the door closed with both hands. The moment it shut, something hit it hard from the inside. I jumped back, stumbling to the floor. Then silence. I didn't sleep at all that night. I sat in the corner of my room with the candle burning, listening for any sound. But none came. Just that door. Waiting. Closed. But no longer sealed. In the morning, I found something new on the doormat. Not stones this time. A photograph. Old. Faded edges curled. It showed the house from the outside, probably taken decades ago. There were people on the porch, 3 of them. A man, a woman, and a boy. The man looked familiar. It took me a moment to realize why. It was the man who rented me the house. But the photo was dated. October 1964, and written on the back, in jagged ink. Don't let the boy out. Shadows that don't belong. I stared at the photograph for a long time. The date, the faces, the warning. Don't let the boy out. There was no mistaking it. The man on the porch was the same one who handed me the keys. Same sunken cheeks, same posture, even the same long coat. But if the photo was from 1964, that would make him, what, over 90? A ghost? Or had he never aged? And the boy. His face was turned toward the camera, but his expression was unreadable. He stood a little apart from the others, like he didn't belong with them, more didn't want to. That photo changed everything. I didn't go near the locked room again, not after what I heard behind the door, not after the chair moved. Whatever was in there, whatever the message meant, it was real. The knocks weren't in my head. The stones weren't random. Something was inside this house. It wasn't just knocking anymore. It was watching. It started with reflections. The first time I saw it, I was brushing my teeth in the upstairs bathroom. The mirror was cloudy, the way old mirrors get, with strange flecks in the glass. But as I leaned forward to rinse my mouth, I saw something behind me. A shadow, small, child-sized, standing just outside the doorway. I turned fast, but nothing was there. Still, I felt it. That feeling of being observed, not just watched, studied. I didn't sleep that night. I didn't even try. I sat on the living room floor with every candle in the house lit. Each flame a small comfort in the darkness pressing in from the windows. Around midnight, I saw it again. Not in the mirror, in the reflection of the TV screen. It was off. Of course, I had no power. But the black screen showed just enough of the room to catch the shadow of someone standing behind the couch. Right behind me, I spun around. Again, nothing. But the reflection stayed. The shadow in the TV screen didn't move. Didn't vanish. It was still there. Even when I wasn't. The next morning, I found something scratched into the floor just outside the locked room. 3 crooked lines. Deep as if carved with a nail or a knife. Not random, intentional. I touched them, and my fingers came away black like soot. That same day, I found my reflection smiling back at me when I wasn't. I froze in the hallway mirror. I wasn't smiling. I hadn't even blinked. But the reflection, my own face, grinned. Slowly, unnaturally. Teeth too many, eyes too wide. I backed away. The reflection didn't. I tried to leave. I grabbed my bag, my keys, and marched to the front door. But when I opened it, the world outside had changed. Trees weren't the same, taller, twisted, black bark like burned flesh. The sky was a color I'd never seen before, like bruised skin. The road that had brought me here, gone. Just more trees, endless trees, reaching inward like claws. I slammed the door shut and locked it, heart pounding so loud I could barely hear anything else. But then, from the hallway behind me, soft footsteps, like a child walking barefoot on old wood. Then the voice, whispering, saw me. That night, I covered every mirror in the house. Every reflective surface TV, windows, even metal. I used sheets, towels, old newspapers, anything I could find. But the shadows didn't need mirrors anymore. They moved on their own. I'd catch them out of the corner of my eye, darting just behind a doorframe, slipping around the edge of the staircase, lingering in the corners of the ceiling. Sometimes I'd hear breathing when I was alone. Other times I'd hear laughing, a child's giggle, mocking, playful, hungry. This house, this place, it wasn't just haunted. It was alive. It had rules, patterns, cycles. And I disturbed something by coming here. Or maybe it had called me here, lured me. I started to wonder if the man ever meant for me to stay, or if I was just the next body to feed the house. That night at 3:13 a.m., I was woken by a sound I hadn't heard in days. Knock, knock. This time, not on the wall, not in the closet, not even at the locked room. It was coming from under the bed. The man in the photographs, I didn't look under the bed. I couldn't. Something told me that if I looked, I even acknowledged what was knocking from beneath my DC, something I could never forget. Something that would ruin my sanity in an instant. So I lay there, frozen, eyes wide open, listening. Knock, knock. Soft, patient, playful. The knocking stopped at exactly 3:16 a.m., not a second more. That detail scared me more than the sound itself. Whatever this thing was, it had rules. It was measured. Like it was toying with me on a schedule, marking time for something I didn't understand yet. The next morning, I tried to find answers. I pulled out the photograph again, the one left on the doormat. I studied the faces. The boy looked young, maybe 8 or 9. His eyes were strange, not scared but hollow, like something had emptied him out. The woman beside him wore an expression somewhere between sorrow and fear. But the man, ... he was smiling, not warmly, not kindly, knowingly. Like he knew I'd be standing here, decades later, staring at his face, trying to figure out who or what he really was. I flipped the photo over again. Don't let the boy out. But now, there was more. Another line had appeared, faded, as if it had always been there, but hidden until now. The man lies. The boy waits. I felt my blood go cold. The man lies. The man who rented me the house, who handed me the keys, who warned me not to stay past October. What if the warning wasn't to protect me, but to protect him? I started searching the house. There had to be something, letters, records, a journal. Anything to help me make sense of what was happening. I found it in the attic, a small box buried under a pile of yellowed newspapers. Inside were dozens of photographs, all of the house, different angles, different seasons. And always the same man, the 1950s, the 1970s, even one from 1999. He never aged. Not a wrinkle, not a gray hair. In every photo, he stood at the edge of the frame watching, sometimes with other tenants, other families, sometimes alone. He was standing in front of the locked room, smiling. One photo caught my attention. It showed the boy again, the same hollow-eyed stare. But this time, he wasn't on the porch. He was inside the house, standing in the very hallway outside the locked room. The door was open behind him. And in the background, on the wall, something had been scrawled in large, childlike letters. He said I could come out now. I dropped the photo. A chill ran through me, and I realized something horrifying. I had opened that door. Even if I hadn't stepped inside, I let it open. I turned to leave the attic, but the hatch had slammed shut. I hadn't heard it. The light bulb above me flickered, then burst. Glass rained down in tiny pieces. I backed into the corner of the attic, heart racing when I heard it again. Laughing. A child's voice. Light high-pitched, echoing all around me. God. And then, you looked at his face. Now he can wear yours. My breath caught. What did that mean? I scrambled back to the hatch and forced it open. I didn't stop to look around. I just ran. Down the stairs, into the hallway. And that's when I saw it. A photo newly placed taped to the wall outside the locked room. It was of me, standing at the attic window, staring out, blank-eyed, pale, but I had never stood there. I had never seen that window from inside. Someone or something had. I tore the photo down and ran back to the living room. I didn't know what I was doing anymore, trying to burn the photos. Leave the house, scream. Then, on the coffee table, I noticed something new. The original photograph, the one from the porch, had changed again. Now, the boy was gone, and the man, staring directly at the camera. His smile wider, his eyes darker. And in the bottom corner, something was written in fresh ink. Words that hadn't been there before. One out, one in. Scratches in the basement, the phrase haunted me. One out, one in. I didn't understand what it meant, but the cold in my chest told me it was a promisor, a threat. I couldn't stay in the house, but I couldn't leave either. Every time I tried to open the front door, I felt the walls tightening around me. Like the house itself was breathing and pushing back. That night, I decided to confront the one place I'd avoided since I arrived at the basement. I'd peeked down the stairs a few times, but the air always smelled rotten, damp, and something worse. The basement door was old and heavy, with iron hinges rusted through years of neglect. The knob was cold in my hand, and when I turned it, the door groaned open like a dying thing. I stepped inside, candle in hand. The air was thick and musty, like a tomb. The only light came from the flickering candle and the slivers of moonlight snaking through a small, barred window near the ceiling. The basement wasn't empty. On the floor, scratches marred the wood, hundreds of them. Deep, angry gouges running in every direction. Some looked fresh. I traced the lines with my finger. They weren't random, they formed a pattern. I squinted. The scratches formed a shape, a circle. Inside the circle, I found more carving symbols I didn't recognize, but that sent a chill racing down my spine. The shapes twisted and spiraled like thorny vines. The center of the circle was stained dark, almost black, like something had been burned or bled there. I shivered and stepped back. The candle flickered violently, and I heard something, a whimper, soft, faint, almost like a child crying. I froze. The sound came again from the far corner. I hesitated, then slowly walked toward it. The farther I went, the colder it became. Then I saw it, a small hole in the wall, roughly clawed out of the bricks. It was just big enough for something small to crawl through. And from it, I heard the crying again. I sat down on the cold floor and whispered, "Who's there?" The crying stopped. But a voice answered, not with words. No, it was a sound inside my head, a single, chilling thought. Help me. My heart slammed against my ribs. I wanted to run, to leave the house, to forget everything. But something held me there. Something pulled me toward the hole. I peered inside. It was pitch black, but the faint glow from my candle lit the edge of something small, something alive. I reached in, my fingers brushed against cold skin. It was thin, fragile. Then I felt a movement. A tiny hand gripped my finger. I gasped. The hole wasn't just a hole. It was a doorway, a prison. Suddenly the air shifted, the candle went out. Darkness slammed into me like a wave. I scrambled back, heart racing. Then I heard footsteps, slow, deliberate, descending the basement stairs. I didn't look. I ran up, tripping on the steps. At the top, I slammed the basement door shut, locked it with trembling hands. For hours, I sat in the living room, the house silent except for my ragged breathing. I couldn't stop thinking about the boy from the photographs, The boy who waited. Had I found him? Was he the one crying in the basement? And if so, who was the man? The man who smiled in the photos, who said, "Don't let the boy out." I knew one thing for sure. The house was not just haunted. It was a prison for something ancient, something hungry. And it had kept the boy locked away for decades. That night, the whispers came again, but this time, clearer. A voice right outside my bedroom door, soft and sad, almost pleading. Let me out. The escape that wasn't. The voice outside my bedroom door lingered long after midnight. Soft, sad, desperate. Let me out. I sat frozen on the edge of my bed, every hair on my body standing on end. My heart pounded like a drum, each beat echoing the warning I knew too well. This wasn't a plea to help, it was a trap. I wanted to run. I wanted to leave this place behind, but every time I tried, the house wouldn't let me. That morning, I packed a bag with as much as I could carry. My phone, clothes, the few photos I'd taken, and a small flashlight. I stepped outside, hoping the world would be as it should, but it wasn't. The trees loomed unnaturally tall, their branches twisting like skeletal fingers. The sky was a bruised purple-gray, and the road that had brought me here had vanished beneath an endless tangle of roots and shadows. I was trapped. I tried to calm myself. Maybe if I drove far enough, I could break free. I walked back inside and grabbed the keys the man had given me. The engine roared to life, but when I tried to drive, the car wouldn't move forward. It felt stuck, as if the road itself was holding me in place. And then I heard it. The knock. 3 soft knocks on the roof. I looked up. No one there. But I could feel the weight of eyes watching me. Inside the house, the air grew heavy. The walls seemed to pulse, breathing with me. I tried the door again. Locked. I realized then the house was a living trap. It didn't want me to leave, not because it was haunted by spirits, but because it was hungry. Hungry for something. That night I heard footsteps again. Slow, dragging footsteps moving through the hallways. I followed them, my candle flickering wildly. The sound led me to the locked room upstairs. The door was open. Inside, the chair sat in the center, facing the corner as before. But this time, something else was there. Shadow. Tall, dark, and twisted. It didn't move, but I felt its presence like a cold hand on my neck. I whispered, "Who are you?" No answer. Just silence. I turned to leave, but the door slammed shut behind me. I was trapped. Panic set in. The shadow stretched toward me, filling the room with darkness. I covered my eyes, waiting for the worst. Then a voice whispered in my ear, cold and cruel, "You opened the door. Now you belong here." The room grew colder still. My breath turned to mist. I realized this wasn't just a house. It was a prison for me, for the boy, and for whoever else had ever come here. The shadow was the man in the photographs. The one who lied. The one who trapped the boy. And now it wanted to trap me. I screamed. The door flew open. I ran down the stairs, through the hallways, and into the living room. Everything was changing. Walls stretched and twisted like they were alive. The photos on the walls shifted, showing faces I didn't recognize. Some smiling, some screaming. I grabbed the front door handle. It was ice cold. I pulled. The door opened and I stepped outside. But the world was wrong. The trees were blackened and lifeless. The sky bled red. And in the distance, the house stood tall, watching me. As I looked back, I realized I was still inside, still trapped. Somewhere far away, I heard the boy's laughter. Cold, hollow. One out, one in. The final truth. VA spent days wandering through that twisted version of the world, the one that looks like ours, but IS&T. The house looms behind me, a dark monument to whatever evil lives inside it. Every time I try to step away, it pulls me back like a magnet. The boy's laughter echoes in my mind. One out, one in. It's not a promise, it's a curse. I don't know how long I've been trapped in this nightmare. Time lost meaning the moment I opened that locked room. Since then, everything's been a blur of shadows and whispers, reflections that don't match, and footsteps I can't escape. Last night I found myself back at the house's front porch, the same porch from the photograph. The door creaked open on its own, inviting me inside. I had no choice but to step through. The hallway was empty, but the air was thick with expectation. I moved toward the locked room upstairs, dread coiling in my stomach. The door stood wide open, sighed, the chair waited, and so did the boy. But he wasn't a child anymore. He was pale and thin, eyes black as voids, face twisted in a grim, knowing smile. He looked at me and whispered, "You came. Now it's your turn." Suddenly the shadow stepped out from the corner of the man from the photographs. His smile was wide, cruel, and final. He said, "Every soul trapped here is a prisoner of the house, but it needs a host. It needs someone to wear a face and lie in the light." I realized then the truth. The man wasn't a man anymore. He was the house. The evil that bound this place, feeding on fear, trapping souls to sustain itself. The boy had been its victim trapped, waiting to escape, and now it wanted me. The boy reached out, and I felt cold fingers wrap around my wrist. Pain shot through me, like ice-biting bone. The shadows closed in. I tried to pull away, but it was no use. The house was swallowing me. Suddenly, I was outside, or at least I thought I was. I was staring at the photograph again, but this time, my face was on the porch. The boy was gone. The man in the house was smiling wider than ever, and I was trapped. In the photograph, forever. If you ever find that house, don't enter. Don't open the locked room. Because once you do, the house will call you, it will wait, and it will make sure you never leave. The end.